So let's go ahead and get into this week's mock draft 5.0. You already know that we're doing this on the NFL mock draft database. We're partnering with Denny once again, really taking you all the way up to NFL draft time to prepare these mock drafts on here because they have one of the best mock draft simulators in the game right now. And I believe I saw on their website, they now have over 700 mock drafts put into his database. So that means over 700 mocks for 2021 have been entered into his system. That they all average them out. You get to see the team charts of who's the Chiefs selected to or projected to select consensus
Mhm.
wise, and there's not really a consensus pick. I think over 8% have Wyatt Davis from Ohio State there, and you can look at other teams too. You can look at some mock drafts that are kind of out there, kind of crazy. They have different tags you can look at mock drafts by, but this is where I go if I want to see any mock draft. If I think, what does Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft go? I don't go to NFL.com or NFL Network. I go to the NFL mock draft database to see, okay, look at it here. It lays out the mock drafts in such a nice way, I think, too. It's so it's better visually appealing than like a listicle, I guess you could call them. And once you can see the picks all laid out to the different teams, it's a lot easier for me. And I know, Jordan, it's easier for you to see too because of the information they have on these prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if there's stats available from College Football Reference, the stats will be on there. The chart that he has is something
Yeah.
that's a really simple touch, but it's really nice that you can see by day what those guys' consensus or average draft stock looks like. And you look at a guy like Greg Newsome, who's dropping today on Wednesdays, people are listening. His draft stock has been steadily rising, and now it's at an all-time high pretty much. He is getting buzz in the first round to the Chiefs from a lot of people. I think Daniel Jeremiah, even a month ago or so, projected him to go to Kansas City. So he's a guy that's really interesting. There are a ton of risers and fallers across the board, and Denny's done a fantastic job with that site.
Yeah, he also has that tab, where we can look at all the risers and fallers in the draft, and it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's a very cool site. So if you're really interested, and maybe even he's got even a redrafts tab on here, you can do your own mock drafts. You can make a profile site and save them all, so you can see how you fluctuate throughout this draft season. It's just a really good website overall. I encourage you to go to NFLmockdraftdatabase.com. Just poke around, just
Mm-hmm.
start exploring and see what you like here. But let's go ahead and dive into our mock draft here. What don't you say, Jordan? Let's start with the Chiefs. This year's draft 2021, we're using the pre draft order. Once again, no comp picks have been announced, so no comp picks will be in this draft. We're going to be using the normal speed, the realistic setting, and the strict trading rules. And let's go ahead and get started. Jordan, we've had a lot of conversations about what to take at 31, and you and I are kind of on the same page here when it comes to. All right, the Chiefs should probably take an offensive lineman, but there's been a lot of buzz recently about linebacker at 31. I've already said my piece about linebacker at 31. I said that on yesterday's episode, but what do you think about it?
Yeah, I was about to say before you finish your sentence, as long as it isn't a linebacker, I think the Chiefs will be in good shape, man. It's one of those things where like it's a tier 2 need, I think. And even if you need a linebacker, teams play in their base 30% of the time. Like Craig Stout tweeted that out, and it's true. It really is about 30%. So you're going to get a guy who's going to play roughly a quarter of the snaps, depending on if he can translate into the sub package or not. And I mean, it's one of those things that you can't really afford to do when you're trying to build a perennial contending team with year one impact. Now, another thing is Anthony Hitchens' contract still has 2 seasons on it, counting this
Yep.
year. If it was 1 year, that'd be a different story. So I just don't think that at 31 that value exists.
So the board has fallen, and we've got Jalen Mayfield going at 30 to the Buffalo Bills. Tevin Jenkins just about fell to the Chiefs.
Mm,
He went to 29 to the Packers. Elijah Vera Tucker had a little bit of a slide here when I was watching the simulation go as you were talking. I was like, oh my gosh, he's actually going to fall. But he didn't. 27 to the Ravens. I think that's a little low for Elijah Vera Tucker. You and I are
mhm.
both very high on that guy. Samuel Cosme, 25 to the Jags. Who else could the Chiefs be interested in? Rashad Bateman at 18 to the Dolphins. That's pretty much it. I think everything else fell as you would kind of expect it to. So, a new feature, and we talked about this with Zach Patra on last what was that been last Thursday that you and I talked to
Mhm.
him. You
Yep.
can see the blurbs now. So if you click on it, you get a little blurb about the NFL Draft Bible on SI, talking to you about Zaven Collins is the one I just clicked on. You can click on the little notes beside it, and it'll give you a blurb about it. So that is an awesome new feature that they have added. I'm super excited about that. So let's kick this off. Let's look at the offensive tackle board. I think that's the first position where we got to go. And there's some solid options here. You got Alex Leatherwood, you have Liam Eichenberg, and you have Dylan Reduns. All three guys that we like. And I think that all three guys that I would be totally fine with the Chiefs taking at number 31. Before we move on, Jordan, I know I ask you this every time, but anyone that makes you stop it, say, okay, let's go right here.
I think either Eichenberg or Leatherwood. Now, depending on have we taken Leatherwood with that first pick before?
Yeah,
Because
we
if
have.
not, oh, okay, then to not do that again. Now, it's not like Eichenberg isn't a good player. I just think that the ceiling with Leatherwood is higher. But then
Yeah.
again, with Eichenberg, you're getting a 10-year starter, I think. Like, if there's one player from this draft at the tackle position where you look back and say, that guy had decade-long starter written all over him, just productive, solid player, it's Liam Eichenberg. So I definitely think that that's the pick.
I think you compared him actually to Eric Fisher, and I know in our conversations you've always said that he's a very solid type player, and he's an Eric Fisher type player. As you're
Mhm.
just you know what you're gonna get from him. Not saying that he's like the exact prototype of Eric
Sure,
Fisher,
just
but
that career trajectory type thing.
right, right, and I don't think you can go wrong with that. I know
Mhm.
sometimes people will hear that. People have been too hard on Eric Fisher. Okay, you
Yeah.
guys got to go easy on the guy. But I think that Eichenberg there is a good pick. Interior wise, you have White, Davis, Creed, Humphrey, Landon Dickerson. Edge wise, you have Jason Noe, Joseph Asai, Carlos Basham, Joe Tryon. Linebackers, you have Zayvon Collins, Nick Bolton, Jabril Cox. Wide receivers, Terrence Marshall, Elijah Moore, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I still think it's Liam Eichenberg, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's lock it in.
All right, let's lock in Liam Eichenberg here. That is our pick number 31. As we already said, he's going to be a solid NFL. You can just tell he's just going to be a very solid guy all around. Going to be good in pass pro, and he's a guy that plays well at Notre Dame as well. So I like that pick.
Yeah, I do too. I think that he's a guy where he doesn't have great athleticism. His form isn't anything spectacular. Like, he's just a solid football player, and I think he has the ability to be a good, productive tackle for a decade long. And in the NFL, that's huge. Now, with how Eric Fisher's career has unraveled compared to his draft slot, not what the Chiefs probably expected, but if you can get that type of player at 31 where he can hold down the left tackle spot for as long as Fisher has, I think that's a home run of a pick.
I'm with you as well. And an interesting development in this mock draft as we're rolling along here. At 63, our number 31 pick from last week's draft is there. Landon Dickerson is available at 63.
Oh boy.
I think this is for me. For me, you guys know if you listen to this podcast, both Jordan and I are big fans of Landon Dickerson. At 63, this might be one of those picks that's you know what you got to run to the podium.
Well, while you were saying that, I was typing in my note Landon Dickerson, center from Alabama for 263. So I think that if he's still there, then, which I don't think is likely, even with his medical history, I think you have to make that pick. And that's two. People say they want the Chiefs to go heavy offensive line. Well, we just went heavy offensive line, assuming that you're on board with taking Lando.
You know I'm going to be on board with taking Lando, but for the sake of the conversation, I guess we should say that Patrick Jones is there, a guy that you are a big fan of. I'm a big fan of as
Yep.
well. Let's look at cornerback for fun. Shaun Wade, we're not too high on him. Aaron Robinson, nothing there. Javon Holland, Richie Grant there. Paris Ford is also still there. Paris Ford has fallen in recent
Mm-hmm.
weeks. Let's see, tight end Hunter Long, Trey McKitty, Tommy Tremble will be there later on. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
we've got to worry about taking Tommy Tremble at 63. So I feel like it's got to be Lando, right?
Yeah, I think so too. Let's do it.
All right, Landon Dickerson at 63, probably the position that I would expect him to go. Now,
Yep.
last week when we took Landon Dickerson, we took Landon Dickerson off of his talent. And with his medicals, we know that's a huge question. We know it's a large question, but this is probably the spot where he is more likely projected to go.
Yeah, I think that if a team like the Chiefs traded out of the first round into 45 or
Yep.
50, that would be Dickerson's draft range between maybe 40 and 50, just outside of that first round, but not too deep into the second. But with that said, his tape is top 20. Like he's a fantastic player, but the medicals are also like bottom 5 in the draft. Like that guy has a ton of medical problems in history. So and they're all big injuries. It's not like they're
Yeah.
really minor hamstring pulls or anything. They're really things that required a lot of rehab, reconstructive surgery, and stuff like that. So there's definitely it's not a safe pick to take him at 31, but at 63, I think that's pretty good.
I would agree with you as well. So let's look at pick number 95. Let's look at the overall board because I think looking at this board here, I think there are some positions of need the Chiefs could fill with Baron
Yep.
Browning, Ohio State, linebacker, Paris Ford still on the board, Cameron McGrone, Hassama Nasruddin. I still haven't really learned how to say that guy's name, even though we've had 5 mock drafts now. And Jamin Davis is a guy who has also caught a little bit of steam up in draft boards and mock drafts as well. I'm kind of liking Paris Ford in this situation right here. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I like Paris Ford. Can we I want to check the wide receiver board just
Okay.
for fun, but I do like Paris Ford a lot.
Yeah, so taking Landon Dickerson, the only problem with taking Landon Dickerson there is you probably lose out on, a Monra or a second
Hmm.
round wide receiver there, but that's okay for me.
Yeah.
Dwayne Eskridge is there, Diami Brown's there, Amari Rogers, Sage Surratt, Nico Collins. There's some names there for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that at 95, it would be okay if you took any of them, but at
Hmm.
95, would you rather have a Dwayne Eskridge, Diami Brown, Amari Rogers, or would you rather have, Paris Ford or, Jamin Davis or someone like that?
I think that it's between Diami and Paris. Now, one last caveat to that. Let's look at the edge board just in
Ah,
case.
yes, yes, yes. Rashad Weaver is there. Deo Oding Bingo. Oh, wow, I butchered that name. That's not Bingo in there at all. Let's sound this one out here. So a little behind the curtain, I guess, for my life is I do a lot of substitute teaching, and I've been doing a lot of kindergarten recently. So you would think I'd be good at sounding these out. So it's Deo, I think is his first name. OdeYingbo. Ode Ingbo. Ode Ingbo from Vandy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay.
I was gonna let you sound it out because honestly, I'm not 100% certain in my confidence being
Yeah,
able to
fair.
pronunciate it myself. So, man, it's I think it's still between Paris and Diami, and I believe we have taken Diami probably at least once, if not twice before, with that 95 slot, right?
Yeah, I think when we took Paris, it was at 63.
Yeah,
And I think Diami was at 95. See, Jordan and I kind of had this conversation too, is, you know, at this point, when we're at in our mock drafts, it's going to be hard not to draft duplicates because there are a
yeah.
lot of guys that we do like. And we do get to talk about a lot of different guys doing this. But I think at this point, for me at least, I think that taking maybe Paris here would probably be a good pick for the future. It really does depend on what Dan Sorensen does, with the mock draft. This is
Hmm.
probably the last mock draft we're going to do without any free agency things
Yep.
that happen, which is good. So I think as of now, taking Paris Ford wouldn't be the worst pick in the world at 95.
I'm with you. I think that the value is good and the ceiling may not be there with Paris Ford as opposed to a Diami Brown, but the impact and filling a legitimate need. Now, the Chiefs seem to be somewhat comfortable with what they have in Hill, Pringle, and Hardman as their top
Yeah.
three receivers. So at safety, you're missing that third safety. There's no one coming in to replace him. So until Dan Sorensen makes up his mind one way or another, we get some free agency news. I'm with you. I think that Paris Ford's a good pick.
Cool. Let's do it. Lock it in. Paris Ford at number 95. I think value wise, that's a pretty darn good pick right there at 95.
Yeah, where was he on their board? Had he fallen some more?
Oh, he was at 80 something. So he has fallen a bit. I think he was at 81, if I remember correctly. Which,
Yeah, his peak was 45.
yeah, I can remember him being pretty like going early second round, and the Chiefs not being
Yeah,
able to draft him at 63. And I think in our first, I think it might have been our second mock draft that we had him at 63. So he's kind of taken a little bit of a tumble, but that might be good for the Chiefs.
yeah, absolutely. In this safety class, I like a lot of those guys. So if you can get a playmaker like Paris Ford who just does a little bit of everything and plays hard, then more power to you.
All right, the Chiefs are on the clock now at 127. Looking at the overall board, Trey Sermon. Don't talk about running backs. Nico Collins, Demetric Felton, Chuba Hubbard, Tamorion Terry is there. Tamorion Terry might be a good wide receiver at this position if we are looking for wide receiver,
Mhm.
which I would kind of anticipate. But for the sake of the conversation, let's look at edge rushers. You have Ellerson Smith, Chris Rump II, and Victor Demuki. I know I pronounced that one wrong, but I don't want to try to sound that one out because there's a J in the middle of it. Um, but they're both from Duke.
Yep.
Jordan Smith, who we took last week, is there 165 is what he's rated. Dalen Hayes, a guy that we've taken a few times as well, also there. But I think that maybe we could wait. Let's see, we run into the situation all the time, don't we? Do we
Mhm.
wait until 159 to draft an edge when, a guy that I really like, Adio Gundigi, is going to
Mhm.
probably be there. I like his versatility a whole lot. I know you like Dalen Hayes because, we're going to get from him. I get excited by the possibility of him playing both inside and outside when it comes to Addy. But
Yep.
what are your thoughts here? Do you think we go wide receiver with Tamorion Terry, Jalen Darden, any of those guys?
I think Tamorion Terry might be the pick, and he's a guy that literally every time we do a draft, if he's there with that fourth round pick, I think it's a no brainer. Like, he has the talent that far exceeds that draft slot, and I think that if he's there, then it's pretty much a no brainer to take.
Yeah, let's do it right now. His talent is off the charts, as you mentioned. You kind of got to throw that whole 2020 season out the window and look at
Yeah.
2019 when it comes to him, because, man, I really like him. And another guy I really like, Joshua Matterbaby, is now going in the 5th round instead of opposed to the 7th round when we
Hmm.
started doing these mock drafts, and he's really shooting up draft boards. There's a lot of good wide receivers in this class, and it really makes me excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of cool to see guys that you're in on early slide up the draft board or climb up
Yeah.
the draft board, and then guys that you were in on early kind of fall down the draft board. That's kind of the flip side of it, like a Paris Ford or a Talanoa Hufanga from USC.
Hmm.
I gave him a late second round grade. The dude, I think, is like 138 on the draft board with a peak of 100. So
Right.
it's one of those things where you just kind of watch people fluctuate and you see what works.
I don't think he had a very good pro day. I think he ran like a
Hmm.
four. Wait, no, that was Chad Stratos thinking ran a 4.6.
Yeah.
But another guy that when we talk about a lot of these guys that we like to throw out there now, it depends on the pro day. What are they doing the pro days?
Hmm. Yep.
Pro days are now starting to come in, and so we're really getting to see where these guys are going to be at. So at 159, Jordan. Is there a position that we haven't really addressed? Obviously, edge is kind of the big glaring one here that you want to look at.
Yeah, I think edge, linebacker, and cornerback. So I'd stick with those three defensive positions there.
All right, let's look at edge here. Jordan Smith, Dalen Hayes, Taron Jackson. Those are your three edges, top three edges available, I should say. Coming shortly behind Jonathan Cooper and Malcolm Kuntz. Linebackers, we have Tony Fields, the second from West Virginia, Patty Fisher from Northwestern, and Monty Rice from Georgia. Charles Snowden down there, rated at 218, ranked at 218, I should say, by the mock draft database. Maybe, no, I don't really need a cornerback. Tay Gowan is a guy that Connor and I talked about in yesterday's episode that
Hmm.
could be a potential fill in there for the Chiefs if they do, which I think that they will move on from either Breland or Ward. They're going to have to pick one of them. So if they move on, it could
Yep.
be a nice little fill there. But I think there'll be guys in, undrafted free agency that you can all go with. So out of those really two positions, edge or linebacker, who piqued your interest the most?
I like Dalen Hayes a lot at
Me
edge.
too.
I think that he's just an all around solid football player with a low ceiling, but I think a high floor. Like, he's going to find a way to make an impact. Now, Charles Snowden is a really interesting prospect because he has the athleticism to do a lot of good things at the NFL. But he really just has a lot of developing to do as well. But you said he was what, 218 on the database board?
218. Yeah, with the Chiefs' next pick coming at 223.
I think we roll the dice there and go with Dalen Hayes, and then we see if Snowden's available with that last pick.
I'm with that. I'm totally with that. I like Dalen Hayes, and I know you're a big fan of him, so I know that if you like him, he's got to be good at least. So Dalen Hayes at 159. I don't think that is maybe even the first or second time we've taken Dalen Hayes at that position.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like Tamorion Terry, where if he's
Oh yeah.
there, you almost have to do it. And I think I gave Hayes like a late fourth round or early fifth round grade. So we're staying consistent. And luckily, I don't look too bad so far.
Never. You could never look too bad. I like how this draft is shaping up right now, especially with the heavy offensive line. Paris Ford, you got Scary Tamori Terry, and then Dalen Hayes coming up at 223. I'm watching this linebacker board as the simulation kind of runs. Charles Snowden is the just went. So
Hmm.
that's too bad. With what we're looking at here, we've got a wide receiver, we've got an edge, we've got a safety, and 2 linemen. What position are you looking at here then?
I'm looking at best player available here in the 7th round.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. And oh man, you know who the best player available is? What
Let's hear it.
is this? Is this guy considered my guy? You think Josh Palmer?
I think he's a Tucker Franklin guy. I'm pretty sure.
All my guys are wide receivers for some reason.
Or big
Him
offensive lineman.
or
Just
big
and
offensive lineman.
he's a big wideout, so you're just a big boy fan.
I love the big boys. Nobody clipped that. But okay, so he's there. You also have Simi Fecco there. Robert Rochelle, cornerback from Central Arkansas. William Bradley King, edge from Baylor. Cameron Bynum from California. He's a corner. And Addy Kun. I should just say, I call him Addy. I shouldn't even try to pronounce the full name.
Mhm.
Ogundiji from Notre Dame, who I'm a fan of just because of his versatility along the line. So would you rather opt for, maybe somebody like Ogundiji here, or maybe a wide receiver, an offensive weapon?
Man, Josh Palmer is really enticing, and so is keeping the Notre Dame crew together with
Yeah,
Ogundiji and Dalen Hayes. So I think I'm going to lean with Palmer just because of his ceiling. I think that he does have some potential to be effective at the NFL. Then you're adding 2 wide receivers, and we could run this under the assumption the Chiefs maybe sign an edge who can do something in free
yeah,
agency and kind of go with that. So I think next week everything's going to be a lot clearer, and then the week
it will
after
be.
that it'll be clear, and then the week after that. I mean, it's going to get better, but for now, I think this would be a pretty good mock if we capped it off with Josh Palmer.
Let's do it. I can't resist taking Josh Palmer, so we're gonna go ahead and do it. He's a big body wideout. I love me some big body boys. Um, golly. But anyway, that'll do
Yeah,
it for this
nobody clip
draft.
these.
Yeah, no, that one was rough. Liam Eichenberg, Landon Dickerson, Paris Ford, Tamorian Terry, Dalen Hayes. Sorry, an ad just popped up. And Josh Palmer. That is who we got here with our 6 picks, right? Yep, 6 picks
Hmm.
on this mock draft. I think that this is one of our best ones, Jordan.
Yeah, I think this is a really good one. And really, the thing that I knew I could tell was going to be a good draft when Lando fell to
Yeah,
63. I was like, this is going to be a bigger of a mock draft. And everything was just rolling from there.
it really was, and I'm glad that we got Landon Dickerson at 63. I'm not entirely sure how realistic that is. I think Eichenberg at 31 is a very realistic pick. Maybe even Paris Ford at 95 is a pretty
Mhm.
realistic pick. Maybe everything else on here is pretty realistic except for Landon Dickerson at 63. I
Mhm.
think he really goes in that probably that 40-ish, 50-ish range pre 60. Because we mentioned, he's a top 20 player at when healthy, and just his medicals are sketchy. I think that, man, we did a good job on this. I know that we have a little bit of repeats on here, but with how the draft season's going, how the names are getting thrown out there,
Mhm.
it's hard for us not to have repeats. So hopefully you forgive us for talking about some of the players that you already know, but hopefully we touched on some guys that you didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always something more to learn, and
Mhm.
there's always someone new to cover. There's always a new riser, a new faller on the draft board. So the more mocks we do, the more people we get to talk about, and I think that's the beauty of this whole thing.
It is indeed. And once again, another big shout out to the NFL mock draft database for partnering with us for doing our mock drafts all throughout the NFL draft season leading up to the first round of the NFL draft on April 29th. You want to do your own mock drafts? Go head on over to the NFL mock draft database, run your simulation, screenshot it, tweet them at Tucker D. Franklin, at Foote Noted, hashtag RTKMock. If you run around the RTK challenge where you take off the top 3 players at each position or the top 5 overall, you can do that as well. Make sure you hashtag that RTK challenge. We'll be talking about those on Friday. We're going to do something a little different with those mock drafts, and I hope you guys really like it. Still going to recognize all the work that you guys have been putting into these mock drafts, but hopefully it's something that's a little bit more entertaining and then just kind of us talking about mock drafts and what you guys picked, kind of talking about the value of your picks. So Jordan will be back joining me for that, and we really appreciate you guys sending in all these mock drafts. The response, I talked about this on yesterday's episode. The response to this has been more than I ever imagined it could be. I don't know about you,
Mhm.
Jordan.
Yeah, it's been absolutely insane. Like, people complain about their notifications blowing up, but I get excited every time I get a new mock draft that comes through. And like, people that I've never interacted with on Twitter, people that I didn't know listen to the podcast, like my friends have been sending me RTK challenges. Like, it is an insane thing that people just, that's the beauty of listening to podcasts and then also being on Twitter, is you see something, everyone's doing mock drafts right now. So why not kind of unify that with an RTK challenge or an RTK mock or something of the sort?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's kind of one of those unifying things. You hit the nail on the head right there, Jordan. So once again, appreciate you joining me. Go follow Jordan on Twitter at Footnoted. He's on day 51 as you're listening to this of his 100 players in 100-day series. That means we're only 49 days away from the NFL draft. It's getting close, so start to get excited about it. Start running more mock drafts. Start tweeting us your mock drafts. We love to see those. Those RTK challenges are always fun to have conversations about too. Like, oh, I could have taken Jabril Cox here, but he was in the top 3 of the linebackers. Yeah, I love that conversation. I love to do that. Jordan and I have talked about trying to do one live, like we do one of these, but man, it's sometimes so hard to do. So, Jordan, once again, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Tucker.